The Sixers are rolling. Joel Embiid looks like an MVP candidate. Ben Simmons is playing like a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. The early season slander towards Tobias Harris looks like it's ignited him on an incredible tear, and the Sixers are just clicking on all cylinders. As of today, they have the 14th best offensive rating in the league and are first in defensive rating. Sure, the schedule's been easy, but their play has been really impressive as well as aesthetically pleasing. I'm Mike O'Connor from the Rights Turkey Sanchez, and I'm here to break down a few factors that have led to the Sixers' excellent start. Let's begin on offense. Shortly before the season, I tried to do an in-depth comparison of this Sixers team compared to their 2017-2018 squad that made it to the second round of the playoffs. So far, that comparison looks pretty solid. They're elite on defense and have a very solid offense that employs a pass-happy style. As was the case in 17-18, the Sixers are currently leading the league in passes per game by a wide margin. Their ball movement has been flat-out awesome, and I'd argue that this team's ball movement is even better than the 17-18 squad. Whereas that team had a bunch of one-dimensional shooters who were severely lacking in ball handling, this year's team has players who can attack closeouts and keep the offense humming. With players like J.J. Redick and Robert Covington, defenses could very easily run them off the line and bring the offense to a halt. But with Seth Curry, Danny Green, Tobias Harris, Shake Milton, and others, simply running them off the line isn't going to help much. The ball just keeps on humming. This sounds like an oversimplification, but it's not. The Sixers are now able to capitalize on situations when Simmons and Embiid draw help defenders in ways that they haven't been able to in the past, especially last season when no one on the team could shoot or dribble. The ability of their role players to attract and beat closeouts is a huge game-changing deal because it means that they aren't as susceptible to the strategy that took down the 17-18 team, which was simply running the shooters off the line. And in addition to the role players, we obviously have to give credit to the centerpieces themselves. Simmons and Embiid have been great at finding their outlets when they draw help defenders, and Doc Rivers has done a nice job of setting them up to create those types of situations. One common theme for Simmons has been that Rivers has tried to target him mismatches to post up against, which has produced some positive results. I generally think that they're overindulging in the Simmons post-ups, but in situations like this one against Terry Rozier, where he's matched up against a small guard, teams are going to be forced to help, and Simmons can capitalize even if he's not doing it directly. Speaking of Simmons, another thing that he's doing well is setting monster screens when the defense is scrambling off of Embiid post-ups. Given that Simmons has no shooting gravity, he essentially has to make himself useful by standing in the dunker spot and screening the hell out of whoever is closing out to the weak side shooter. This one here was a beauty. He catches two defenders at once with his screen to free up Shake Milton for an open three. While the Sixers rank only slightly above average in offense right now, this has to be considered an encouraging start. They're moving the ball exceptionally well, they're finding ways to leverage their best players' strengths, and they're getting an additional scoring punch from their tertiary and secondary creators. The mere fact that they look like a well-balanced offensive team again is, at the very least, a massive relief for all of us. Now let's move on to the defensive end, where, as I mentioned earlier, the Sixers ranked number one in the league by a considerable margin. Now, I'm skeptical that they'll continue at that pace, given that all but two of their games have come against bottom six offensive teams, but they've still been very good, and it's an encouraging start for sure. As you would expect, it's Simmons and Embiid leading the way on that end. Harris has had a great start to the year, Curry's been a pleasant surprise, Green has been solid, the bench has been good, but Simmons and Embiid are just otherworldly. They may be in direct competition for Defensive Player of the Year right now. As I outlined in the preseason, the Sixers are running some more aggressive pick-and-roll schemes than they have in years past, which has definitely paid some dividends. But the surprising part of their defensive success is that their opponent's shot distribution is not much different than it was last year. Opponents are taking a remarkably similar percent of shot attempts around the rim, 35.2% this year versus 35.7% last year, and a comparable amount from deep, 33.9% this year versus 31.5% last year. Really, the single stat that explains their defensive improvement is this. Opponents are making just 54.3% of their shot attempts at the rim, compared to 64.7% last year. It's a little bit shocking that they've been this good protecting the rim, considering the fact that they're not sacrificing open three-point attempts in order to pack the paint, which is how teams like the Milwaukee Bucks tend to defend. It is, of course, a massive credit to Joel Embiid as well as Dwight Howard. When Howard takes the floor, opponents are shooting just 53.4% at the rim, compared to 51.8% when Embiid is there. Right now, the Sixers are discovering what an incredible luxury it is to have a competent, rim-protecting backup center. It's extremely encouraging that the Sixers' rim defense doesn't fall off a cliff when Embiid leaves the game, which has been the case for many years now. The start has been very, very encouraging, but the real test is about to begin. The Sixers are going to face Brooklyn, Denver, and Miami twice over the next 10 days. At the very least, the biggest thing we can be certain of is that the Sixers are a solid, watchable team, which is more than we could say last year. Whatever comes next, we will be sure to have it broken down for you here. For the rights to Ricky Sanchez, this has been Mike O'Connor. Thanks a lot for watching.